Okay, I guess we'll begin. Want to welcome everybody to tonight's program, which, as I think you know, is a family affair celebrating Hatfield's multi-generational farms. And this is a program that we have been very excited about doing. We started later than we should have and tried to get information from a lot of farms in the beginning of planting season, which wasn't ideal. But I think what it's also shown us is that it's a much bigger project, and so we will see what options there are for doing a bigger, fuller version of this project. But I think it gives a good idea of what richness there is in Hatfield from the farming community and helps us appreciate the farmers that we have and just being able to live in a town where you know the people who are growing your food. So without further ado, I will start. He told me I didn't need to look around to check the screen, but just have to be sure. So one of the questions that we had several questions we were trying to answer. One of them was, how and why has family farming persisted in our town for so long? The town started in the 1660s, and farming has been happening since the beginning. What is it about farming that draws farmers to it? It's not an easy job. It's not a sure way to make a lot of money or have a lot of time off. What does farming teach you or give you? And one of the hardest questions, how does the farm get passed from one generation to the next? Or does it? So our first topic was getting started. When did you know or think you knew you wanted to be a farmer? And what made it attractive to you? Well, it turns out you're never too young to start. There's the danger element of being a young child and being allowed to do something that might be a little scary. Normally, you don't get to drive a vehicle until you're 16, or maybe 14, or if you live in Hatfield and work on a farm, maybe 7. So we're going to listen to a short clip. This picture that you see here is Chet Swazlowski Jr., who's currently overseeing the Swazlowski potato farm's operations. And when he was 7, he was operating a Caterpillar tractor. So while Chet may have been precocious, he was by no means alone. I have talked before this project even started to probably a handful at least of people who told me that they started driving the tobacco wagons when they were 7. So lots of 7-year-olds apparently have been put to work in Hatfield, because in Hatfield nothing is wasted, especially if you live on a farm, not even the labor of 7-year-olds. So here's Bill Burke Jr., son of former Massachusetts Democratic Party Chairman Onions Burke, telling fellow farmer John Pease how it was in Hatfield.
It was fun. Hatfield, you could, when you were 7, 8 years old, you're driving the tractor down Main Street with a pulling a tobacco wagon. If that was any other town, you'd probably be arrested. But they knew the farmers needed their kids to work, and it was just part of a daily job. Chief Henry Slavoski, he and the chiefs before him, they knew they did it.
Yeah.
They worked.
So Bob Start grew up helping his father, Stores Start, farm on South Street. So he learned the ropes and he caught the bug early. Bob died last summer, unfortunately, so his wife Joan will tell us how they came to own the Robert Start farm. And that's Joan with him on the right.
When and how did you acquire your first farm?
Well, my husband was farming with one of the farmers here on South Street, and he said something to him about, when are you going to retire and sell the house to me? And so that's when Mike Yarrows had said to Bob, the house is for sale, you can buy it. And so Bob came to me and said, hey, you want to buy the farm? And we came and looked at it, and he said, I want it very badly. And I said, okay, let's do it.
For some people, knowing they wanted to run their own farm came even earlier. Mike Antosh Jr. was 13, so we hear, when he asked his dad, Michael Sr., if he could start a farm. Later, he and his wife Liz took over the family farm from Mike's parents. Now their son Jason grew up working on the farm with his family, but now it's Jason who is running the farm. These photos, by the way, are from a 1999 Foxfire report that they did in Smith Academy by James Schaffer and Donald Barcombe. Harrison Bardwell, who is now the 9th generation farmer at Bardwell Farm, for him it was something he was drawn to from the beginning, as he told Liz Denny in a recent interview. And I should have mentioned also that Joan and Christine Start were interviewed by Monica Vicula.
I'd say the biggest idea that evolved out of this is that, I really enjoyed planting the seeds and getting them to the maturity. And, as a young child, it was really just focused on figuring out, those basics of planting. But the biggest, aha moment or invention, if you want to call it, that I kind of came up with is, my grandparents, we were growing all this food. Right. It was way too much for our family to ever consume in a given week. And, I would, pickling cucumbers, they're one of my favorite vegetables. Yes. And so it was one summer day, I was just carrying around this bucket of cucumbers, and I went up to my grandfather. I'm like, we could sell these. I'm like, why can't we sell these? We can't eat them all. Let's do something with them. And I don't know if it was that summer. It was 2012 or something, 2012 or 13. But I decided to put some sawhorses and a piece of plywood out front and throw some vegetables on it. And that was the first summer where I really say Bardwell Farm was reborn in a way.
For Mark Wendelowski of the M.A. Wendelowski Farm, son of Tony Wendelowski, who passed away last September, he told me his interest in farming was always there, but the timing and the circumstances needed to be right.
I was working kind of full-time on the farm as a teenager, kind of moved away, not too far away, moved to Northampton, got my plumbing license and started a plumbing business. So I was kind of removed from the farm. I would come back and help during the summers. But probably 5 or 6 years ago, about 10 years ago, we moved back to Hatfield. So it put me right across the street from the farm, helped out more, and then we just started our own farm about 5 years ago.
Was that something you always figured you would do, or was it something that kind of came along gradually? How did you guys decide we want to start a farm?
Well, I always wanted to, and I think my father was always sharing that it's a hard way to make a living and it's uncertain. So to make sure that you're financially stable before you go all in on farming, because it is just questionable. So by moving back to Hatfield, we had a farm, we bought a farm, more land right across the street. We had everything we needed, and it just seemed natural to expand that and just do some farming for ourselves.
For Jim Galanka of the Galanka Farm out on Route 5 and 10, he took over his parents' farm gradually, not being sure that he would, and he also took on another profession which accompanies farming.
So I took plant and soil science when I was in school. at UMass. I graduated there in, 78. And I worked for a while for a mushroom farm in Connecticut in a lab there, doing sampling and stuff. And it was, corporation type work, and I couldn't crack it, I was too young for that. So I came back, and I always liked working mechanical stuff, so I became a plumber. And basically worked in the winter for a plumber, and in the summer I worked on the farm. Gradually got bigger and bigger.
So when you were working in the summer on the farm, was it still your dad's farm then?
No, basically he had pretty much retired by then. I think he was pretty much done when I was in college. He was retired about the time when I got out of college. So he was 67 then. That was in 78 roughly.
Sometimes the decision to start a farm grows out of an idea more to fill a market. And having been raised on a farm is not such a stretch. Here we're going to listen to Christine Start Ramachi, who grew up on Start Farm on South Street, as she tells Monica Vakula about the farm she started.
And when you were little, did you want to grow up and be a farmer?
No, I wanted to move to a big city because it seemed, everything seemed so small here.
When you were going to school, you were interested more in the city life, but did something make you change your mind and make you want to try your hand at farming?
Yeah, it's the family farm where we would grow vegetables every year, and we would can and we would freeze them. We tried something new. My husband picked out peanuts and popcorn to try, and the popcorn came out amazing. And so I started researching it, and there wasn't a market. So I said, well, let's see if we can get some local popcorn started. And I got Mom and Dad on board, and we had local popcorn for 5 years.
I love the long pause after Monica asked her if she wanted to be a farmer when she was a kid. I think it's not an uncommon sentiment for young people who are getting ready to make their decisions about life. If you grow up in a small town, you're thinking, I would like to go somewhere else where there is a big city and more people and more options. But sometimes after having checked out some of those bigger places, they decide that what they left was pretty nice and they come back. So the next area we wanted to look at was, how did you learn about farming and who helped you learn what you needed to know? Let's hear what Mark Wendelowski has to say about his dad and Harry Bardwell as well, who both saw Tony Wendelowski as a great mentor.
Yeah, he always enjoyed sharing his knowledge. So throughout the years, as younger people would come up, Harry Bardwell is a good example. He really enjoyed sharing his information. He would share his information with anybody who asked. Just loved to help people and give them whatever they needed to get going. And
so when I started, because I started this business in high school pretty much, I was really just focused on the farm stands where I started. It's what I was doing. It's really all I can manage with school and stuff. So that's really the foundation of where my business started. So I did that for a number of years. And then I slowly jumped into a little bit of wholesale, really small. I was working with Wendelski. He actually was one of my really good mentors who I worked with for years and really learned a lot from him after my grandfather passed away. But he was one of the individuals that helped me get into wholesale markets. Right. And he was very, very willing to kind of like share that. And so, over the years, after I got out of college, actually, that's really when I had time to like figure out, okay, what do I want to do with this business?
So I'd like to say what's happening in the photo. So that is Harry's on the right with his friend Trevor Brown, and they are washing peppers in Tony Wendelowski's produce washer at Tony's farm on Prospect Street. And this is also a good example. This is one of the photos that was sent by the Wendelowski family. just farmers helping farmers, and not only, sharing equipment, but also sharing knowledge. And I also want to say that when I was talking to Mark Wendelski, he also mentioned that one of his biggest mentors outside of his father was Bob Start, who he said was incredibly generous with his time and his knowledge.
What are some of the memories that you have of farming?
Well, my father used to grow the tobacco when I was like 7 or 8. I really enjoyed it. When I became 10 or 12, I hated it. I wanted to go play baseball or basketball, and he had to go out in the fields. But it was a lot of good memories. Everybody helped each other. Everybody got along. It's like our neighbor, the Zagrodniks on Main Street, Mr. Zagrodnik, the father. He'd plow everybody's yard around in the wintertime, the Billinses, ours, the Novaks, the Osleys, and never charge anybody. Everybody helped everybody. If you had a crop, you'd come over and help us. We'd go over and help you, and there was no money exchange. It was just neighbors helping neighbors.
So that was just another example of how the kind of farmers helping farmers was also mirrored just in the community of neighbors helping neighbors. And that was Bill Burke, again, speaking with John Pease. So a lot of what next generation farmers remember about their farming fathers is what they could create or build or invent, and how they passed on those skills if their kids were interested in learning. So first we're going to hear from Bob Start's daughter Christine, and following her from Tony Wendelowski's son Mark.
So Christine and Joan, when you started your popcorn business, Christine, you said your husband had said there was a need for that in the area, and so you gave it a try. And how did that all start, and where did you learn how to do all the things that were necessary for having a successful venture?
So after we saw it grow and we harvested our first batch, I said, I know who to ask. So I asked my dad. I said, Dad, you've got all the knowledge. What do you think about growing some popcorn? And he was like, because he grew everything. He could grow anything. Him and my mom could do anything. So he's like, he made cucumber pickers, so he came up with drying tables. He would just invent things, and the next morning I'd arrive, and we'd be surprised with what we could dry down the popcorn with, or what kind of machinery, or what thought he had. Yeah, we made corn cribs. Gosh, we constructed corn cribs. We went on long rides to go get source equipment from all over the Northeast. Those are our road trips. And it was really Dad's vision and Mom's persistence that drove the business.
Yeah. And what were some of his other inventions for the farm? Did he make? I'm sure he could repair anything.
He could. He repaired all his own tractors, his trucks, everything. He kept everything up in top-notch condition. So by the time that we did retire, the trucks were in very good condition. So people were anxious to buy them because they knew they were in very good condition. So, there isn't anything he couldn't do if he put his mind to it.
Right.
I think I'm going to be a farmer in my next life. So this is Tony Wendelowski speaking about his dad. This is Mark Wendelowski speaking about his dad, Tony.
And did you mostly just had to kind of learn those things yourself, or was your dad a big help in that? Or?
Oh, my dad was a big help in that. He was always building new equipment. Being a machinist, he was always making parts. I remember I was probably 8 or 9 years old, and he rebuilt our cucumber picker in the driveway of our house. It was probably parked in front of the house for 2 months, 3 months, took it all apart, put all new conveyors on it. I'm sure my mother was thrilled with that, but it was parked out there for a good long time right in our house.
Now, so did he initially make that cucumber picker, or somebody else did?
No, Steve Lipinski initially made that cucumber picker for my grandfather, probably in the 1940s. But it was all manual at that time. You'd pick cucumbers, you'd throw them kind of in a basket, and somebody would pick the baskets up and dump them into a bag. He redid the cucumber picker to put conveyors on it, so it was more automatic. So the cucumbers would move up by themselves and you could dump them into a truck at the end of the row.
So what I wanted to say about the cucumber picker, I didn't hear back from the person who made a comment on the Facebook page, because we showed this photo and some others in promotion for this program. And so I'm not going to say what her name is, but the comment that she made was, she said, in the early 60s, when I was 11 and 12 years old, I picked cukes for Olga and Louis Wendelowski, along with their sons, Tony and Louis Jr. She said, I think I made 75 cents an hour working on that old cucumber picker. And my daughter, who's home this evening from college, she worked probably in 2017 or 18 in the summer for Tony and Helen, because she'd done some asparagus picking. But she got to lay on the mattresses on this cucumber picker weeding onions. So that is a good long life for a piece of machinery, and seems to be the case for many machines on Hatfield farms. So the next question of who will take over the farm. What if no one in the next generation wants to take over the farm? And what if you are getting older and are not so interested in getting up at the crack of dawn every day to go out into the fields, and there doesn't seem to be anyone in the next generation who's interested? Let's listen to Gordon Williams, also known by his nickname Flash, and Mary Belden Williams, his wife, of the Luther Belden Farm in North Hatfield, talk about this issue back in 1991. This was for a film called Farmland Forever that was sponsored by the American Farmland Trust, and it was produced by Florentine Films. And we give thanks to the American Farmland Trust for letting us use it, and also to our own Bob Wagner for tracking down a copy of the video.
All this land was land that was trod upon by people that came before us, and we sort of inherited the land. The same property has been in the Belden family for about, I would say, 10 generations. It was always sort of understood that somebody, probably from the next generation, would be here to sort of carry on with the land.
I wondered what was going to happen to the farm. I really didn't have anybody that was particularly interested in coming back, so I felt, but I did sit down my family and say, well, if anybody wants to come back to the farm, it's here.
The first year out of college, I taught, but I didn't really have my heart in it. I would consistently catch myself daydreaming and looking out the window and wishing I was outside, and when I got home from school, I would work until dark. I spent my weekends working and helping Dad, and that year I decided to come back to the farm. I came back to the farm simply because I loved the farm. When I taught, all I wanted to do was to be outside, and I just wanted to be with the land and with the animals, and it sounds corny, but that's what it was. I just wanted to be home on the farm.
If we had thought for a minute that none of our kids would be interested in the farm, I think we still would have gone ahead with the development rights. What was most important to us was that this land be continued to be used in agriculture.
The farm would be worth about $600,000 if it were developed. But if we put it in houses, it could never be farmed again. We would lose that prime agricultural land forever.
The sale of the development rights ensures that this land will always stay in agriculture. John Doe, the developer, can't come in here now in 50 years and 75 years and 100 years and say, I want to develop that piece of land, because the state says no way. This land will forever stay in agriculture.
So you heard Daryl, Marion Gordon Williams' son, change his mind and decide he wanted to stay on the farm after going off and trying something else. Let's hear what his new wife at the time, Lucinda, thought about it, as she did not grow up on a farm. And this is from an interview I did with Daryl and Lucinda in 2010 for the Hatfield Historical Society that was funded by a Hatfield Cultural Council grant. I also want to say it's great to see some of the farmers here tonight, a lot of them here tonight. We've got Daryl here and Sandy and Betsy Belden, and I think we have Jack and Jill here with some of their kids, which is just fabulous. Okay, so here we go. This is Lucinda Williams. Lucinda, what was your experience of that whole time?
Well, when Daryl asked me to marry him, he was a teacher. So I thought, this is great. Home at 3, summers off, sign me up. I thought that sounded like a great plan. It wasn't too many months later that he really, you know what, he really suffered. The politics of being in the teaching, especially with special ed, was very difficult. And he had migraines every day, and he just wasn't happy. There are very few people in their lives who are able to do absolutely what they love the best and be able to do that for a living. And so that's what Daryl gets to do every day. Now, that doesn't mean that every single day he's really excited about getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And it doesn't mean that every day on the farm is great. But it does mean that what he's chosen to do, this profession, is the right choice for him. And it's difficult. It's no one goes into farming for the time off or the money. You go into this lifestyle, and it's more than a job. It is a lifestyle. And all of us who are in agriculture, who are in farming, do it because we love it, because it's a life that we believe in and that we want to pursue. And that's not the lifestyle that I grew up with. I grew up with parents who were in, my father was a professor and my mom was a teacher. So my experience was not growing up on a farm, but I think I've adapted pretty well, and sure are glad that the kids have the chance to be able to grow up on a farm.
So to survive and thrive, farms need to respond to market conditions, take product risks when the time is right, and maybe start doing something new with the times or with the new generation, being able to match the skills and interests, perhaps, of a new generation. So Jim and Jan Galanka are at the stage where they're wondering if one of their children might come back to the farm, but they're not so sure at this point. Let's listen.
And then what about the kids? Did they grow up kind of helping on the farm?
Yeah. Emmett did more. Stephen did. Yeah, he helped.
Stephen hung out.
Yeah. He didn't have the interest in it though. He was more of a desk computer person that he liked. And Emma though, she took a liking to it, and she's been helping right along here.
Yeah.
Quite a few years. So.
Yeah, Jen was saying she has another full-time job now.
Working for Johnny's.
Johnny
Selected Seeds.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, out of Maine. So,
but she likes
sales rep for him.
She likes to keep her hands on the farm.
Yeah, work out something there with her, whatever. Who knows? You don't want to be forced to do anything like that. Right. I made this decision myself.
Right.
Like I said, I don't think that we really count Emma out. I think that if she were to carry on, it would just be in a very different capacity.
Yeah, farms change all the time.
Yeah. Right. And it's the dynamics of it. I do well here because I do almost all the mechanical work myself. If I need something made, I make it. If I need something rebuilt, I'll rebuild it. And if I had to go bring all the stuff that I have to a shop and have somebody do it, that would never, that's what, stuff like that makes a difference.
In this next clip, Bill Burke Jr. talks about his hopes and feelings for his family's tradition of farming, as well as what he's done to protect his own land. And if I didn't say this before, Bill Burke is Riley Burke Malinowski's dad, and so he is grandfather to Tucker and Alex Malinowski, the family that you see in front of you, with Richie Malinowski in the back, who's the son of Ed Malinowski Sr.
What do you hope that, Riley and Rich and your grandkids will continue on?
Oh, I hope so. It's in Richie's blood, and it's definitely in my older grandson Alex's blood. Tucker likes the ladies and riding around. He probably got that from me, but he also he runs the greenhouse and he does all of that stuff. So they'll continue. We got the land, got the equipment, so they'll utilize it. I know they will. And with them, I don't have to ever worry about them selling a property for development or anything like that. They'll always keep the property.
That's good.
That's a big problem nowadays. Is these companies come in and offer big money, and guys are selling farmland. All of my land, I put in APR, so it can never be developed.
Yeah.
I just want people to know also that I ran into Tucker Malinowski at the town hall voting yesterday, and I did ask him if that was okay. He kind of smirked and said, "I'm not surprised." Anyway. So getting back to the Luther Belden farm and who might carry it on, Lucinda Williams talks about how it was with Daryl's parents and how they've tried to make it, and how they tried to make it for their children as far as not exerting pressure.
Well, can I just say too how much I appreciate Daryl's parents not putting pressure on Daryl or on any of his siblings to take over the farm. There is a lot of, there is a burden, whether it is good or not, but Daryl being the 12th generation here in Hatfield with this land there's a lot of responsibility to that historically. And his parents, I think, were wonderful in their attitude about allowing their children to grow in whatever ways they chose, encouraging them to go to college and to study what they loved and to look at other vocations. They were delighted when Daryl decided to come back to the farm. I think that really pleased them, but there was not the pressure on him to do that or on other siblings. And I think that is such a huge part. We've tried very hard to be able to do that with our 4 children. It's, as I said before, it is not a job to be taken lightly. It is more than a job, it is a lifestyle, and it is hard. Every day is difficult. Now, most days are also great, but it is not easy, and it's hard enough when you love it and you choose it to make it work. But if there is a sense of being forced into this lifestyle, it absolutely will not work. So I'm very pleased that his parents didn't put that pressure on him, and we, Daryl and I, try very hard not to put that pressure on our children. Would we be pleased to have one of them or more be interested in using the land? And that would be delightful. We don't feel any need to insist or demand that this stay dairy. It has been so many different things in the years before us. It certainly should change with the people and the times as it goes forward. So it would be a delight if one or more of the kids want to use this land, and no pressure.
So at the time I did this interview back in 2010, you hear her say they wish someone would come back. As many of you probably know, their son Jackson, who's right back in the corner there, has since signed on to be owners with Daryl and Lucinda, and now shares the farming life with his wife Jill and their 2 children and his parents, Daryl and Lucinda. So that's a wonderful ending to that story, or And I also love this picture that's courtesy of the Luther Belden farm site and the Williams family, because it really looks like it's Daryl walking along with young Jackson. But it's not. It's Jackson walking along with young Remy. So, the farming lifestyle, what does it teach you and what does it give you? As we heard from so many of Hatfield's farmers, farming is not just a job, it's a lifestyle. And it's a lifestyle that teaches many things, not only to the current farmers themselves, but also to their families. For kids growing up, if you start them young enough, work can be play, and you can teach a work ethic at the same time. So let's listen to 3 of the Swazlowski brothers, Frank, Chet, and Stanley, introduced by their sister Helen, tell about an incident in the potato fields that they still remember fondly. And this is from the Swazlowski's 100th anniversary video, for some of you who may have seen it.
Made sure everything ran well. And he would get after my brothers. He would pick them up in kindergarten, pick them up from school, and bring them to work, during the working season.
It was a lot of fun back then. You had vehicles that almost sometimes try to race with a tractor, The grandfather, well, he was from Poland and all, he had an accent. And he told us, come on, pick up these potatoes. They would drop some, every so often. Come on, pick up. So we ran around the truck.
I took Stanley and I put him in the toolbox and I crawled in there and covered and put the door up. And he couldn't figure out where we went. He's looking all over. He sees the footprints and he's talking in Polish.
He goes, what? Where did they go? Where did they go? We didn't say nothing until he kept saying it. Then we had to start laughing, and that's how he caught us. We got tired of picking them up when you're that age,
It's things that you remember when you were really little. I must have been maybe 5, maybe Stanley was 2.
So John Sosalowski Jr., who worked on the Swazlowski potato farm his whole life, like his dad, he died in 2020 at age 63. In his obituary, it noted, he used to say, life is not easy, quick, or fair. You need to show up every day, work hard, and act with integrity. So this work ethic is echoed by a lot of farmers. Let's hear what Mark Wendelski has to say about what he's learned from farming.
What do you feel like farming has taught you?
Farming from an early age taught me a work ethic. If you don't work hard farming and do things right, the success is pretty unlikely. So it taught you that hard work pays off, and it takes hard work to do something right.
Do you feel like you've learned some other skills, whether kind of hard skills or soft skills, that you can use in your plumbing business or other places?
Oh, the skills are definitely transferable. There's so many skills learned on a farm. You have to be able to do everything. So whether it's building barns or fixing equipment, motors, the whole gamut. So it transferred over to plumbing. I raced cars for a while, which was the same thing. It taught me all the welding skills and the motor skills to be able to do that. The skills you learn on a farm can really be adapted to anything else you want to put your mind to.
So this picture is a picture of Mark walking behind the tobacco setter. His father, Tony, is driving. And Meg and I really like this picture because there's 2 people that are hidden in this photo. The 2 people that are sitting on the setter. One is Helen Wendelski, Tony's wife, And the other person is Martin Hernandez, who's one of the workers who's worked with Tony for about 15 years. And I think they both represent as both the women in a farming family, you know, whether it's the daughters or the wives, unless they're the ones that end up starting the farm, and, you know, some of the immigrant workers who maybe work on a farm for many, many years, and they end up being a little bit hidden over the years. So this photo seems like a perfect metaphor for all that. So we understand what Mark is doing there is just making sure if any plants fall out or need to be reset in the ground, and also making sure that there's going to be enough plants to kind of keep the process moving along. So this is Jim Galanka in a current photo with his wife Jan outside their farmhouse on 5 and 10. And what Jim learned from his dad and his parents was more of a lifestyle than hard skills.
I always was tinkering with stuff. I learned, self-taught myself everything, really. Get a manual. First thing I do when I buy a piece of equipment, I buy a manual for it. Parts manual, this and that. And I'm not afraid of fixing anything, really.
Yeah.
You know?
And did you learn a lot from your dad, or was more learning on your own?
Well, he told me how not to do things. You know, but yeah, no, he showed me some things, you know. I mean, but the thing that he taught us, him and my mother, was it was frugality, you know, being really cheap, you know, and because they were brought up during the Depression, and everything was, you know.
And had 8 mouths to feed.
Yeah, and had 8 mouths to feed, and they didn't, you know, anything. When I was, you know, buying a tractor, it's like, you know, what do you need that for, you know, you know, things. So they had a different attitude than I did, you know? And it was a different time when they were, you know, doing stuff. So, but they did okay. They had 8 kids. They didn't need tractors, 6 tractors, whatever I have out there. You know, I still haven't figured out how to drive 2 tractors at the same time. That's the only problem.
Yeah.
I'll just tell you briefly about the rock in the photo. This is described a little more in the clip from Jim on the website, which we'll be telling you about at the end of the program. This sounds very much like a wives' tale, but it could be true. Jim's been told this story by at least 2 different people, that this rock, which shows up in a photo that's on the website of the old homestead from about 1900, that apparently the gentleman that was living in the house at the time really liked to go up to Westbrook and sit on supposedly this rock up in Westbrook. And so apparently one night his friends, probably imbibing cider or something, decided they were going to move the rock from Westbrook and dragged it down off the mountain and left it in the side of his yard. So if anyone knows anything to support this story, please let us know. Does farming help prepare you or give you skills for other jobs or tasks in life? And besides skills, what does farming give you? Here's Christine, Bob Start's daughter, and her mom, Joan, answering that question.
Did farming help you with any other types of work that you did?
I feel it was a solid foundation of working with family, having structure, you know, being able to see results.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that helped me in my whole life, just making sure, you know, being outside, being in the fresh air, and knowing where your food came from, and being thankful for what you have.
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, you know, it's the freedom of being out there.
Yes.
You know, you're at the mercy of Mother Nature, but there's still, you know, you're still going to end up with something, but you're at the mercy of Mother Nature mostly.
It's that quiet place
It
where
is.
sometimes you just want it quiet and beautiful. Yes.
And would you encourage either of you young people to try that way of life as a farmer?
Absolutely.
Yes. Oh,
Whether
yes.
it's small or it's large scale, even just container gardening is just very satisfying as well.
Yes. I think a lot of people now are starting to go to the little gardens because food is getting scarce and everything is you know, very expensive.
Do you have any favorite food memories or recipes from your farm?
I think just
Like
everything,
everything.
like Mom said, everything in the garden was just so fresh that they put it out, they either canned it or froze it. And the sweet corn you could have years later and it still tasted like it was candy.
Yes.
Yes, I've experienced that.
Yes. Bob built shelves for me in the full length of the basement there, and I put all my canned goods up on there and named them all. It was like, so that was for the full year, and we made sure it lasted.
And that's what I did at my house. I have
Yes.
canning shelves.
Yes.
Just like it. And I can and freeze too, just because it tastes so good.
Yes. You can't get the same way in the store.
And it's satisfying. You grow it and you're like, you're harvesting
Oh, yes.
it. You're tired, but it's that really good tired where you sleep like a log.
Yeah.
So you may have heard that a farmer needs to be a jack of all trades. That's because most farmers can't afford to hire all the tradesmen and women that you would need for all the things that need fixing. Here's Harry Bardwell talking about what he's had to learn, and the picture is of Harry and his dad Jonathan discussing a roof vent on the greenhouse, I think.
What has working as a farmer or for your farm taught you?
Patience. Patience and time management.
Yes.
Which is something I've really developed this year,
Yeah.
starting out. They always say this is a jack of all trades, and
Well, look at what you're doing tonight.
yeah, fixing a golf cart.
Right.
And you know, I'm not a mechanic, I'm not a welder, I'm not a plumber, I'm not a carpenter,
Yeah.
I'm a farmer. And I can do, and I'm only 25, and so like doing this and having my own business and just having to physically jump into things when I might not be comfortable because one, I don't have the finances to just have something
Hire somebody to
outsourced,
do it, right.
or in the time it needs to be fixed or needs to be done. So it's like really being able to jump into things and just either not having a clue what I'm doing
Just
and,
do it,
and
right.
learning, utilizing other people as resources to learn. But you know, without doing what I'm doing now, I don't think I'd know half the stuff I know today. And so, you know, I think being a farmer really just gives you that opportunity to either learn or know or want to do anything under the sun in a trade way, I would say.
Yeah.
So Daryl talks a little bit about what farming means to him, but also the economics of what it means to be a farmer today. And again, this is from my interview with Daryl back in 2010. Although the photo that you're seeing is Gordon, Williams, 3 generations there, Gordon and Daryl and Jackson.
I think the best thing about farming for me is my family.
We like him too.
They've been very supportive of me, the kids and Lucinda, of taking on this, because this is not just my adventure. This is our family's adventure. And we do it maybe a little bit differently than my mom and dad, who do it maybe a little bit differently than my grandmother and grandfather. In farming today, Lucinda's required to have a job somewhere else. It pays, you know, she's worked part-time. It pays health insurance. It, you know, helps provide carpet, whatever. We need, in today's day and age, it's hard to find a farmer whose wife does not work off the farm to gain some income. Doesn't have to be full-time, can be part-time. the kids have been very supportive. I love what I do here. I'm very lucky to like what I do. And it all doesn't work without that basic family unit being supportive. That's the deal.
So the last section, and there's just 3 clips left, we're almost done, is just kind of preserving the land and the farm and the lifestyle. What is it like to grow up in a small town that is still full of family farms? So here we have a clip that is actually courtesy of the Daily Hampshire Gazette and Kevin Gutting, the photojournalist who did the story. This is from, I think, September 15th, 2018. And we're going to listen to a little clip by Donald Vollinger, who was working the harvest with 2 other generations of Vollingers, and he was working on the harvest for the Zagrodniks, for Jeff and Greg Zagrodnik on Honeypot Farm. Actually, that was taking place on the old Boyle farm, and Jeff and Greg are both 4th generation tobacco farmers in Hatfield. So when you just think about this clip, all the tradition that is packed into just this one little bit of a tobacco harvest, it's really pretty amazing.
When did you first start working in tobacco?
1946. Well, I was born on the farm and grew up on a farm, and my father was a tobacco farmer, so you figure it out. I was there all my life well, back then. Yeah. My father had one of the first setters that one man, one row tobacco setter. He had a 2-row setter. Transplanting, yep. They grew the plants in a tobacco, what they called the tobacco bed under sash. My father was tobacco grower before my time.
Was that shade tobacco?
Oh no, Havana like this. This is broadleaf. We had Havana. It's a little bit smaller leaf than this, what they call broadleaf. I worked with them right there in that building right there when I was in high school. That building there, that was Boyle Farm. School vacation, I worked in a tobacco shop. The downstairs was heated with a lot of humidity, and they used to sort through the tobacco down there into different classes or different sizes or whatever. Well, different sizes and different types of tobacco. But it was mostly Havana back then that I worked in. Broadleaf came in here later, years later. There was quite a bit of tobacco around though this year.
Yeah, free. Not quite free. One hand washes the other.
Any challenges to picking it?
Just almost the same as what they're doing here today. The only thing is, my folks, we were on this side of the river. They hung it on tobacco poles with twine. The other side of the river speared it and put it on laths. And they speared it. They didn't put it on spikes or nails and lath like this is. They speared the stalk right onto the laths. That's where, well, Hadley, that's how they grew theirs over in Hadley.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we'd just like to thank the Gazette and Kevin Gutting again for letting us use that clip, and also some photos from that article on the website. So in this next clip, a clip again from Bill Burke Jr. talking to John Pease, you get a sense of what it was like to grow up in Hatfield a number of years ago, and what that has meant to a lot of people. Hatfield certainly changed from the years that Bill grew up in the town, but there are many things that remain the same, and a lot of family farms are one of them.
there'll always be farming, you know, whether the Sosalowskis, you know, the next generation goes, or it'll be something else. It'll be the corn growers. It'll be, this is the best land in the valley here. So hopefully it just doesn't go into homes or developments.
Was that what brought your grandfather here, and those people basically heard that this was the valley to set up in?
Well, I wished I knew. I mean, I wish I know what I know now, because I would have asked them back then, why did you come here? But, I was just happy they came here, because I couldn't have, if I could pick anywhere in the world to grow up, I'd pick Hatfield. I mean, I'd go, I never regretted growing up here. It was the greatest childhood in the world. All the kids and the friends and the school, you knew everybody knew you. So Hatfield is probably, in my book, the greatest town in the country.
That's high praise. And this photo, actually, Bill is on the tractor there, Bill Burke in the front, and his grandson Alex is handing tobacco leaves to, I think the hidden person here is Bob Ostrowski, and Richie, his dad, is right behind him in the Malinowski tobacco harvest of 2016, I think. So some of you may have heard this story before. If Lucinda's here, she's probably going to be like, you're using that again, but anyway, I just love this story, and again, it comes from that 2010 interview. We don't mean to romanticize farming, because it is a hugely hard job, and it is not an easy career to take up, but it does come with rewards if you are someone who is drawn to it. And when your family is involved, so long as your family is getting along, it adds richness and makes work easier. The counter side is also true. If your family is not getting along, it adds heartache and makes work harder. We're going to close with this clip from Lucinda from that 2010 interview.
You know, even in really good years, farming is tough. It's just always hard. There's always something that needs to be replaced, or more needs than money. And that hasn't really changed a whole lot over the years. Some years are better, and some years are tougher. It's very interesting, because when the kids were little, we often we've never had the money for everything the kids want. And I think that's appropriate. I don't think people in general should get everything they want, but I certainly hope that we can provide for everything they need. It was funny, as we were talking one time, the children were small, and our daughter Becca said something about whatever the latest thing was that she wanted that we were not providing. And she said, well, why was that? I said, you know, honey, we just don't have the money for that. And the money that we do have, we would choose not to spend in that way. And she looked at me and she said, well, are we poor, Mom? And I said, well, not really. We're very rich in many ways. Look at these other things that we do have, these experiences we've been able to provide. And so she looked over and she said, I think we're rich poor. And I thought, what a great term. So we still use that. We still talk about the fact that we're rich poor. You know, there's an awful lot that we don't have, and that's okay. There is so much that we do have. You know, well, we've got a great lifestyle. We've got a fabulous family. We have plenty of work to do. Every day, we have plenty to do. We never sit around being bored. There is always plenty to do. So, you know, that's a balance. And I sometimes will sit out on our front porch. I will think about the generations of women who have lived in this home, who have worked the land, raised their children. It's a good life. It's a very good life. And it wasn't easy for any one of them. It's certainly not easy for us today either. That doesn't make it bad. It just makes some days more difficult than others. But really, overall, it's very, very good.
That's the end of our program. Now I'd like to make some thanks. We'd like to thank the following people for helping put this program together. As I mentioned before, the Gazette and Kevin Gutting, one photographer we only ended up showing, I think, one of his photos tonight, the picture of Daryl with Jackson and Becca when they were next to the cow by Gordon Daniels. But on the website that we'll be telling you about in a moment, we have a lot of photos from Gordon Daniels, and some of you may know back in 1988, Gordon spent about a year documenting a lot of Hatfield farms and went around and visited the farms and took lots of photos for a big project on Hatfield farms. And in 1989, in a Hampshire Life, I think it was April 7th, the whole issue was a spread, a photo essay of Gordon's photos of Hatfield farms. And over the next several years, there were a number of other essays. There was, one that was on the Sosalowskis. There was one, I think, that was on the Williams farm. Ones that did several different, covered several different farms. But a lot of his photos from that project ended up framed in the Hatfield Town Hall and have been hanging in the foyer of the Hatfield Town Hall for a number of years. So if you ever get to the town hall and you've walked through there and you haven't noticed the photos, stop and take a look at some of them because they're fabulous photos. We have a lot of his photos that are on the website, some of which he sent us directly. He's living in Florida now, so we thank you, Gordon. We'd also like to again thank the American Farmland Trust for letting us use their Farmland Forever video, to the Swazlowski Potato Farms for letting us use the clip from the 100th anniversary video. We'd like to thank the Hatfield student authors of the Foxfire reports, some of which were fabulous and some of which were equally terrible. And most importantly, we'd like to thank all of the Hatfield farmers and their families who participated, for certainly stopping to take the time to give us stories when you didn't have time to do so, for looking for photos when you didn't have time to do so. Just thank you so much for participating, and we wish we could have included more in this time frame. So now on to the new website. It's called Hatfield Family Farms, so hopefully you'll be able to remember it. Weebly is the thing you have to remember. That's what all of our websites are, the platform they're on. So HatfieldFamilyFarms.weebly.com. Please check out the website. Is it live now? It's live? It's live, okay. And so I would like to have Meg Baker stand up because Meg is the new curator as of tonight of the Hatfield Historical Museum. And Meg created the new website. I helped a little bit, but she pretty much did the whole thing. And it has, this is a piece of the opening page. That's Bob Start on the tractor with his granddaughter, Shauna. We thought that was a nice photo to use for the banner. Bob died last summer. And how can you go wrong with babies and classic tractors? Here's a preview of two of the farm's pages. That's a page from the Swazlowski page, pictures from the Swazlowski page on the left, and pictures from the Zagrodnik page on the right. So thank you for joining us. For more info, please visit our website, which is listed there, hatfieldhistory.weebly.com. If you just do a search online, you'll find us pretty easy. We also put up a lot of information on our Facebook page, and people put a lot of comments about things, and sometimes it's a way for people to ask questions. So please follow us there if you're on Facebook. And I think that's the end of our program. Thank you so much.